Sí, no, todavía no estamos al aire, ¿eh?
Me avisan, por favor.
¿Nos avisas, Pati?
Sí, se está configurando.
Ah, perfecto, perfecto.
Oye, ¿los demás cerramos micrófono y video en lo que está la doctora?
Ahí estamos.
Ahora sí estamos al aire. Sí, si gustas.
Muy buenos días a todos. Este es el ciclo de videoconferencias internacionales de Formación Prospectiva 2020. Los desafíos del futuro. Uno de los desafíos más fuertes que tenemos hacia el futuro es sin duda la educación. Siempre hemos dicho que la educación es la actividad que está más cercana al futuro y la pandemia actual nos llevó al futuro de manera brusca, casi violenta. Llegamos 20 años adelante. La educación en línea forzó y descubrió nuestras vulnerabilidades. Los docentes no estábamos preparados para ello. Los alumnos carecen de dispositivos suficientes para asistir a clases virtuales. La improvisación nos ha llevado a diferentes tragedias educativas porque no pensamos que sean éxitos. Tenemos que evaluar con toda conciencia estas experiencias y tenemos que aprender a pensar en el futuro que ya llegó con el empoderamiento de los alumnos, con la necesidad de ser felices y saludables, cuidando el cuerpo y las emociones, con un aprendizaje para toda la vida, con dinámicas de juego que permitan un aprendizaje mejor y más divertido hacia la invención y la innovación, con una tecnología que igual nos da toda la información del planeta, como nos tiene que enseñar a apropiarnos de ella, más como medio, no como fin. A ser tecnocreativos, entender la solidaridad y responsabilidad social como algo fundamental, integrar redes colaborativas de aprendizaje en una conexión planetaria. A enseñar para el futuro se ha dedicado desde su origen el proyecto Teach the Future, creado por el visionario Peter Bishop, quien ha insistido que desde los primeros años hay que enseñar el futuro. Y se ha dedicado a construir una sólida red por diferentes países y un repositorio fundamental para la enseñanza-aprendizaje. Hoy vamos a conocer la experiencia de 10 países de la red. Bienvenida a esa conexión planetaria, esta convergencia de saberes que nos lleva a la construcción de un mundo mejor. Mil gracias a todos por esta cooperación global y por intercambiar experiencias para la construcción de futuro. En especial, quiero agradecer a la maestra Aletia Berenice Montero la organización precisamente de esta Teach the Future Global. Muchísimas gracias y doy la palabra a la maestra Aletia Montero.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Muy buenos días. Buenos días desde aquí de Ciudad de México. Mil gracias por la invitación, doctora Baena. Es un honor para mí poder presentar a mis colegas, con quienes además he estado trabajando de manera cercana con algunos de ellos para la estructura también de esta gran organización. Pues muchísimas gracias y sin más preámbulo, vamos a tener una ronda donde vamos a participar 10 integrantes de esta organización internacional, 10 integrantes. Hasta el final tocará la participación a nosotros como México y vamos a empezar entonces con la introducción del cofundador y director ejecutivo de Teach the Future, Peter Bishop. ¿Quién es Peter Bishop? Bueno, en pocas palabras, él tiene este puesto de director y de fundador de esta gran organización que ya les contará él un poco más de qué se trata. Y bueno, respecto a sus antecedentes en el campo de los estudios de futuros, él cuenta con una maestría y un doctorado en sociología con énfasis en cambio social. Además, fue profesor emérito de Previsión o Foresight de la Universidad de Houston, Texas. Y también es miembro fundador de la Junta Ejecutiva y miembro de la Association of Professional Futurists. Entonces, vamos a proceder a ver a Peter Bishop.
Good day. My name is Peter Bishop. I'm the director of an organization called Teach the Future, whose mission is to bring futures thinking to schools and to students around the world. I spent most of my career in the University of Houston as a professor of foresight, and having retired there, I created this organization because up till then I had been teaching adults about the future, and very happy to do so, and yet very few people, if anyone, was talking to young people about their futures. Yes, teachers would say that we're preparing you for the future, but when I asked them what they were doing specifically to prepare for students for the future they faced, they said, well, we're teaching them math and reading, we're teaching them geography and history. Well, those are nice things. I said, do you ever tell them about the future? Well, no, I don't know anything about the future. And therein lies the problem. It's really important that we include futures thinking in the regular school curriculum so that students know how to anticipate change when it comes to them, and even more importantly, how they can influence change as they're going forward. It was meaningful for me to work in the futures degree at the University of Houston. It was the first degree in future studies in the world and is now joined by half a dozen or a dozen other programs around the world. I'm happy to be able to learn to teach this to younger people as it's going along. But it's very hard, and we haven't made too much progress yet, and I'll share those in a second. We're still at very early stages. Those stages include my teaching a course in the future of Houston right after I retired, in building a library of teaching materials that teachers can use to teach the future, writing and adopting a few books, essentially workbooks on helping middle and high school students work towards getting scenarios. And I'm fortunate to be joined by a group of very dedicated and very interested and talented people who are building this organization and building this movement all the way along. On the other hand, education, as we know, is not an organization that is particularly ready to change. Most people believe that education's mission, its purpose in life, is to transmit the knowledge and the experience of previous generations to the new generation. In sociology, it's called socialization, to make young people socialized in order to teach them both the knowledge and the culture that they're getting ready to join as adults. And that's an important mission. I certainly don't discount that. But that mission is valuable only to the extent that the knowledge of the past and the experience of the past is transferable to the future. To the extent that the past is like the future, or the future is like the past, of course, that's very valuable, and it is to some extent. On the other hand, we know we are living in times in which the increasing rate of change and the increasing frequency of disruptions makes that analogy not quite perfect. Learning about how people coped with and were successful in the past is not unimportant, but it's not enough. We also need to be teaching students how to deal with a different world, a world in which their parents and their grandparents do not know about, a world in which the public school educators that created the current system did not know about. And fundamentally, the big change, of course, in our lifetime, in our recent life, is the appearance of digital communication and information to the point that it is having consequences throughout the world, including education. Information used to be valuable. People graduated with lots of knowledge. What they knew, they carried around in their heads and used to be successful in the world. That was the world that I grew up in. But knowledge and information today is now a commodity. In other words, it's everywhere, it's easily accessible, and it's almost free. One is not going to get a much competitive advantage, therefore, by learning lots of facts, of memorizing lots of theories. We can get that on our phones or on our computer.
Sí, perdón por la interrupción. Vamos a hacer un cambio en esta grabación, dado que contamos con todas estas grabaciones.
Good day. My name is Peter Bishop. I'm the director of an organization called...
Y nos parece importante que ustedes puedan tener acceso a esto. Vamos a retomar el video desde donde se quedó para que podamos ver lo demás. Muy bien, una disculpa por la interrupción.
And used to be successful in the world. That was the world that I grew up in. But knowledge and information today is now a commodity. In other words, it's everywhere, it's easily accessible, and it's almost free. One is not going to get a much competitive advantage, therefore, by learning lots of facts, of memorizing lots of theories. We can get that on our phones or on our computers or through the media. What we don't know how to do, and what we're not teaching, unfortunately, is what to do with that information, which is a skill that needs to be taught in school as an explicit learning objective. I had a conversation with the history department last year in which I said, well, learning all those historical facts is nice and it's maybe important, and I'm a great fan of history myself. What do you teach students to do with that? How is that knowledge going to change their personal lives, their family life, their work as employees or entrepreneurs, or even as citizens? How to use history, not just to know history. So our purpose in Teach the Future is part of a larger movement, a movement to introduce skills as the most important learning objective in schools, not information. You have to know things. We're not saying not teach the facts. On the other hand, we're more interested in teaching what to do with those facts than simply memorizing the facts to start with. Let's take sports as an example. Students, usually those interested in sports, enjoy their sports a lot more than their academic subjects. Did you ever ask why? Well, first of all, they're learning skills. They're practicing, they're getting better, they're competing with others and showing how good they can be. And they know some things. In a sport, there are rules. There are things you're allowed to do and things you're not allowed to do. There are plays that they have to memorize. But most of it is the skill of doing the sport, not simply memorizing those rules and those plays and giving them back on a test. So shifting from content to skills, not 100%, but where the emphasis is on what to do with knowledge, not just to. And we believe that future's knowledge, future skills, is as key to this as anyone else. In fact, learning about futures thinking is almost better than learning about historical thinking or scientific thinking. It's easier to teach because there's no text, there's no facts. It's all about research, investigation, curiosity, critical thinking, creative thinking, empowerment, creating change. If we were teaching that in the schools, I believe we would have students who are not only more engaged in their learning, because skills are a lot more fun to learn than facts, but they would also have something that they can carry into the rest of their life. I have a family anecdote that I'd like to share with you. Our younger daughter went to a high school in Houston that was dedicated to the performing arts. Half the day, she was in the theater program. She was learning the skills of being an actor, learning the skills of stage management. Did she ever use those in the theater industry? I can tell you that she did not. Never was in a play after that. Never entered that as an occupation. But she carried away skills of presentation and diction, which contributed her to being a great teacher and a great facilitator and presenter. And even more importantly, she learned about professional responsibility, about being part of a team, about doing your part, that others depended on you to be good as you depended on them to be good. And those are life skills that everyone can use, no matter what occupation you go into. Teach the Future is an outgrowth of a growing foresight community among adults. There are hundreds of courses and seminars and keynote speeches about the future every single year. When are we going to allow young people to be part of this conversation? When are we going to say, we know how to teach about the future today, let's start teaching it in high school and in college. That's our mission at Teach the Future, and I've enjoyed the opportunity to share that with you. I hope you join us and become advocates or even teachers for teaching the future in your schools. Good day.
Muy bien, vamos a verificar nuestras grabaciones con los subtítulos. De todos modos, les recordamos que ustedes van a poder tener acceso a todas estas grabaciones a través del canal de videoconferencias FCPIS, que es donde estamos haciendo esta transmisión, y próximamente también van a estar en el canal de Teach the Future. Muy bien, vamos entonces a verificar sobre la siguiente grabación. Tocaría el turno a Cristina Pozzi de Italia.
Ale,
¿Sí?
antes de que hagas la presentación, ¿me dejas probar si se repite este detalle técnico?
Por supuesto. Vamos a hacer una prueba al aire.
Okay.
Adelante. Ajá.
Déjame,
Hi, my name is Els Dracht. I'm an independent freelance trend researcher, trainer and writer living in...
De él sí se ven, de ella sí. Nos tocaría el turno a Cristina Pozzi. Si podemos probar el de Cristina, por favor.
Ok. Ay, perdón.
¿Sí?
Porque la escuchan, pero no la ven, ¿verdad?
No.
Dame un segundo.
Claro que sí. Estimado público, ustedes saben que estos son los gajes de la tecnología y esto va a ser nuestro día a día.
Ok.
Hello everyone, this is Cristina Pozzi from Italy. I am CEO and co-founder of Impact School. Impact School is an organization
Parece que está bien.
Okay. Youth in schools and universities.
Hay que pagar para jugar con los robots. ¿Ya paró?
De acuerdo, muy bien.
Hay que pagar.
Muchísimas gracias. Gracias, audiencia, por su paciencia, por su tolerancia con estas cuestiones técnicas. Muy bien, parece que todo va a correr ya viento en popa y vamos entonces a proceder con el turno de Cristina Pozzi de Italia. Ella es cofundadora y directora general de Impact School. Cristina es una popularizadora, una emprendedora social y una ciudadana activa con el objetivo de impactar positivamente en la sociedad. A través de la educación y la reflexión ética sobre futuros posibles, Impact School está dispuesta a dar a los estudiantes, los ciudadanos y las organizaciones las herramientas para dar forma de manera responsable al futuro más deseable para la sociedad y los individuos. Gracias a la labor realizada con Impact School y a sus experiencias anteriores, Cristina ha sido invitada como joven líder mundial del Foro Económico Mundial 2019-2024 y de la comunidad EYL40 en 2020. Su libro, Benvenuti nel 2050, Bienvenido al 2050, está ahora disponible también en inglés. Muy bien, antes de pasar al video, una amable solicitud de recordar a todos aquí en la sala que puedan tener apagado su micrófono y su video mientras tenemos las transmisiones. Muchísimas gracias.
Hello everyone, this is Cristina Pozzi from Italy. I am CEO and co-founder of Impact School. Impact School is an organization that is working both with the youth in schools and universities and also with companies and the general public. We are focused in bringing discussion, education, and also collaboration around possible alternative futures, starting also from the observation and the study of new emerging technologies in order to understand their impacts on our society today and also possibly tomorrow. The aim is also to build together the best possible future. In fact, all our activities usually aim to create projects and strategies. If you are a company, of course, a strategy for yourself. If you are an individual, a strategy for your growth, or also to positively impact your community and your family, your society. This means also understanding how to use the exponential technologies and emerging technologies in order to make it happen with a plan, starting from the analysis of the possible alternative scenarios. So we were born in 2016, and we started already in 2017 to work with the Ministry of Education here in Italy in order to bring new methodologies and knowledge about technologies and science to teachers and to students. Actually, at the beginning, on 2017, we were at a conference and we met there, Teach the Future. And it seems so natural to join the foundation, as this is exactly what we already have been doing with students and teachers, and that was exactly our focus. As I said before, we also work with companies, and this is an activity that helps us to fund everything that we are doing with the youth. In fact, everything we are doing with them is done through a non-profit organization. With this non-profit organization, we also have a lot of volunteers helping on Italian territory. There are more than 60 today, and it's easier to reach more people thanks to them. So, as I said, it felt natural to join Teach the Future, and we did it starting from 2017. And I would say it's very beneficial for us, and I hope that our participation is beneficial also for the community. In fact, what I believe is the strength of this community is the fact that we can learn from each other, we can exchange experiences, we can help each other out if we want to do something bigger, more international. And this is working very well for us so far, and we really hope that we can create more and more projects in the future. What did we do in these 2 years? Well, actually, we implemented a lot of activities here in Italy based also on the frameworks and on the knowledge base that was shared through the community. And also we helped translating a book that can be used specifically with the youth if you want to teach the future. And we are using it also with teachers in order to make future become a topic that enters into the curricula here in Italy. So we are also starting some experimentations in schools next year, and hopefully, if those go well, after that we will be able to present a bigger project also to the Ministry of Education. And we're not only working in education and organizing events. In fact, we are very active also online. We strongly believe in a model that can merge activities online and offline in order to have people participate more constantly to our activities. So we have Facebook groups, we have Instagram for all ages, we have newsletters. Also, we are organizing future camps, which are 1 week activity for kids starting from 2020 or 2021, given the emergency that we are living today with this pandemic that hit us in the last month. We also have future hubs, which are communities organized locally by our volunteers and our ambassadors. These communities are meeting every once a month or 2 months in order to project together for new activities to do in the schools and for the general public, for the non-profit activity. And they are
Muy bien, esta fue Cristina Pozzi desde Italia. Muy bien. Vamos a continuar entonces nuestro programa. ¿Sí me están escuchando? ¿Alguien que me verifique?
Sí.
De acuerdo, muchas gracias. Muy amable, más vale checar. Muy bien. Vamos entonces ahora a continuar. Ahorita pudimos observar una gran labor de esta italiana desde Impact School, que ha estado realmente esta institución muy activa. Y ahora vamos a pasar también a otra de las celebridades de la Prospectiva. Estamos hablando de Rosa Alegría. Ella es de Brasil. Es directora del nodo brasileño del proyecto Milenio. Es prospectivista desde hace 18 años. Graduada de Filosofía y Letras de la Universidad de San Paulo, maestría en Estudios de Futuros por la Universidad de Houston Clear Lake. Trabaja en Brasil y en todo el mundo. Es una de las mujeres futuristas también más reconocidas en América Latina. Además, fue cofundadora y vicepresidenta de PUC-SPNF, Future Studies Nucleus, durante 16 años. Y desde el 2000 ha representado al Proyecto Milenio de Brasil. Además, es cofundadora de Pangea Ageless World, iniciativa pionera que estudia los movimientos intergeneracionales y, por supuesto, es la cabeza de Teach the Future Brasil. Con ustedes, entonces, vamos a tener a Rosa Alegría.
Hello. It is a pleasure to be part of this seminar so important to the world of education. Thank you very much for the invitation, Guilhermina, Aletia, and all colleagues at UNAM. I have been involved with future studies for 20 years, and I'm leading the activities of Teach the Future in Brazil since 2018. I'd like to share some slides to support my message. Just a minute. Okay. I'm Rosa Alegria. I'm talking from Brazil. I am graduate in the master's program of future studies at the University of Houston Clear Lake. and was privileged to have Peter Bishop as my teacher in the early 21st century. This was an experience that changes my life. The dream of being an astronaut that is common to some children. I had this dream also, and I never thought that one day I would be studying just so close to NASA. The university was very close to NASA. At this time, at that time, NASA was in Houston. It was a transformative experience in my life. I could see the planet in real time, and I saw myself on the planet, looking at the TV through the NASA channel. I was living there in my campus apartment, and I saw the TV and looking at the planet and looking at myself there. So that was very, very important image for me. This strong connection I have with this image of the planet came through this epiphany in the NASA channel, and from there I worked for a long time with environment and sustainability programs. This image of the planet Earth inspires me and reminds me of a Native American proverb that says that we did not inherit the word from our ancestors. In fact, we borrowed it from our children. So this is another image, very, very transformative image. This image is called the Earthrise. It was taken by Apollo 8 astronauts. And this image changed the world. Just 50 years ago, we had a more real image of the blue planet and this beautiful sphere. And from this image, we became more aware about the planet. This image greatly influenced the environmental movement in the 70s and still influences today. That is only 50 years. I also want to talk about the importance of images, about the relationship that new generations have with the future. Alvin Toffler said once in one of his articles, he wrote about the relationship of young people to the relationship with the future that young people had, and about the importance of the images that are nurtured in their minds. So my question is, what kind of images are we spreading today in the schools to young people? What quality do these images have? Do they scare? Or do they inspire? Do they inhibit or stimulate anticipatory skills? I learned about Teach the Future when it was founded by Peter Bishop in 2014, and in 2018 he proposed it to me to introduce Teach the Future in Brazil, and I said yes. I loved the idea, and I formed a group of people who believed in the idea. At that time, I had already become a grandmother. I am a grandmother now of 3 kids. And my connection with TTF was profound because I reflected upon something about the quality of my ancestry. I asked myself, am I being a good ancestor for these kids and for all the kids of the world? That these kids will live much longer than me on this planet. Teach the Future makes me feel responsible as an ancestor. As an ancestor of future generations, and it makes me feel kind of purpose, kind of legacy that I have to leave, and makes much sense in my profession as a futurist. It is a privilege, it's a real privilege to be part of this community that has expanded around the world, and now I am very pleased to work on the development of projects for TTF Global, together with Peter and together with some colleagues here. We have already conducted some courses, some activities with private schools, public schools. We've been also teaching teachers from all over the country. We are always present in the Brazilian press, and we have had a significant impact on the educational system. We are in alignment with the curriculum base created 4 years ago by the government. And this is our management group in Brazil. And we also have a group of notorious people. They are very knowledgeable in their fields. We call them ambassadors, and they help us propagate TTF across the country, including Professor Lilia Mello. She is among the 50 finalists in the most important global teacher awards in the world, the Global Teacher Award. So Lilia Mello is one of our ambassadors in Brazil, and she's very excited about being together with us. The challenges of the education for the future are there for us to embrace, are there for TTF to embrace and help, and to give creative responses, inspiring people, inspiring teachers, inspiring schools to insert the future in schools, in the educational system. This image was created 100 years ago, in the early years of the 20th century, and portrays our society now. This was an image how people looked at the future, how they saw the future in this 21st century that we are living now. So what you see, you're seeing here a lot of electrified books, okay, implanted in the heads, in the student brains. So in reality, this is what happens today. We are trying to implant content in the minds of young people, since many of these contents do not interest them. And with the internet, they all have the content they need. So in reality, this is a situation. We are preparing students for professions that will no longer exist, with technologies that are obsolete, to solve problems that are still unknown. This is a phrase I read somewhere with no author, so I have replicated here because I think this is very, very precise about the reality and the challenges of education today. So this is A.G. Wells, one of the most famous science fiction writers and futurists. And he also asked what we are asking today. In 1932, he was giving an interview to BBC. This is an article with what he said in the interview. So why we don't teach the future in schools? Why we still teach only the past? This has been questioned by many years. So this is an example. One of his statements. Doesn't it seem clear that we should have not only one or two foresight professors, but entire colleges and departments doing their best to anticipate and prepare? In the 70s, Alvin Toffler was one of the first to disseminate the idea about the future in schools also with the book. This book is really good and published in 74, and this phrase is well known and introduces one of the great challenges that this pandemic moment presents to us. And we have to think about how we will live our lives in this post-COVID era. What are the great challenges of living in these post-normal times? To be understood by complexity, by chaos, and by contradiction. So this phrase of Toffler brings some of these challenges. The illiterates of the future will not be those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So we will all have to learn, unlearn, and relearn. This is one of the biggest challenges of our new times. More recently, in 2019, the OECD published this latest report, and the first sentence of the foreword is this: how education will reinvent itself to respond to the megatrends that are shaping the future of our societies and educating students for the future instead of the past. So in order for us to be protagonists instead of victims of the future, we have to come together. We have to collaborate. We have to create communities, identifying actors that are very conscious, very aware of the challenges that need creative responses. And through a great diversity of ethnies, of gender, of disciplines, of views, diversity will be the way. And we can create communities around Teach the Future all over the world. That's what has been done in some countries now. There has never been a more favorable moment than this one. In the pandemic, this is the moment which Erving Laszlo calls the macro shift. And this moment is requiring futures literacy in schools. So I would like to conclude with a reflection for all of us. These children who are being born or have been born already, these children will be able to live till 2100 year. These children maybe will cross this year. So the questions that we have to ask ourselves now is, are we contributing to create a better future for them? How are we behaving as ancestors of these new generations with so many challenges ahead? What can we do now so that the educational systems help them and enable them to have a constructive relationship with the future and help them create their desired future? Thank you very much.
Muy bien, agradecemos mucho la participación de Rosa Alegría desde Brasil. Ahora vamos a continuar con un colega suyo que se llama Wellington Porto. Wellington Porto es director de operaciones y tecnologías en Mothers Against Drunk Driving y también lo es en Teach the Future Brasil. Es además profesor en la Universidad Presbiteriana Mackenzie, cofundador de Pangera Isles World, iniciativa pionera que estudia los movimientos intergeneracionales. Fue Community Manager en Startup Grind, fundador y CEO del IFEX hasta el 2018, una organización generadora de experiencias de turismo, entre otras cuestiones profesionales. Por cuestiones técnicas, este video se va a presentar con un audio en español y subtítulos en inglés. Adelante entonces, por favor, con Wellington Porto.
Olá, meu nome é Wellington Porto, sou diseñador de negocios y profesor universitario de las disciplinas de innovación digital y emprendimiento. Es un honor y un placer poder participar del painel Teach the Future de la UNAM. Vivo en São Paulo, Brasil, y soy miembro de TTF desde enero de 2016. En 2016 tuve contacto por primera vez con el tema del futurismo cuando tomé un curso introductorio con la futurista Rosa Alegría. Desde entonces comencé a interesarme y profundizar en el tema. A principios de 2019, Rosa me invitó a formar parte del equipo en Brasil, del equipo directivo de TTF Brasil, porque entendía que debido a mi pasión por el tema y por emprender en el ecosistema de startups brasileñas y también por ser profesor universitario en temas relacionados con la innovación y el emprendimiento digital, mis experiencias y las habilidades podrían unir fuerzas en el equipo TTF Brasil. Pertenecer a la comunidad TTF para mí es la oportunidad de ayudar a estructurar el propósito de elevar estudios del futuro a educadores y a jóvenes en Brasil, así como mejorar y aplicar las prácticas aprendidas hasta ahora en aula. El futuro es más de los jóvenes que es nuestro. Utilizo el pensamiento anticipatorio en mis clases mediante la aplicación de algunas herramientas como el cono futuro, la matriz STEEP, la creación de líneas de tiempo futuristas, ejercicios de ficción de diseño y la técnica de los 3 horizontes. Para mí, la educación impactada por toda la transformación del modelo mental y tecnológico que llegó con el siglo XXI, se está reinventando. Sus métodos y estructuras están siendo cuestionados. Las metodologías activas y las salas de aulas inversas, así como la colaboración, la comunicación, la empatía, por ejemplo, están en el centro de la transformación de la educación en este momento. Y el gran desafío de la educación en este momento es preparar a los jóvenes para responder preguntas que no están preparados para responder, así como prepararlos para profesiones que aún no existen. Es para ayudarlos a estructurar sus proyectos de vida que implican el diseño de una nueva profesión y la construcción de sus futuros deseables. El punto de inflexión clave para el siglo XXI nos presenta un escenario caótico contradictorio y complejo. Es nuestro gran desafío y vivir y navegar en este mundo de rápidas transformaciones e incertidumbres. Este escenario requiere una gran adaptabilidad, flexibilidad y velocidad. Y estas, en mi opinión, son las grandes habilidades del siglo XXI. Adaptabilidad, flexibilidad y velocidad. Una comunidad de futuros, para tener éxito, debe guiarse por el pluralismo y la diversidad de puntos de vista. El futuro está formado por un gran arcoíris de colores, edades, razas, historias y credos. El éxito en la creación de una comunidad de futuros radica en su pluralidad de puntos de vista, su capacidad para proyectar futuros diversos y la condición de que estos futuros tengan que servir a todos, porque al final debe ser eso, un futuro que nos sirve, no un futuro que le sirvamos. Mi gratitud permanece y fue un gran placer colaborar con ustedes. Gracias por la oportunidad.
Agradecemos mucho la participación de Wellington Porto desde Brasil. Ahora nos toca el turno a Els Dracht. Els Dracht es de Holanda. Ella es investigadora de tendencias, independiente, profesora y autora con más de 20 años de experiencia. Está fascinada por el cambio y por cómo impacta en la vida diaria de la gente, ahora y en el futuro. Le encanta desmitificar el proceso de investigación de tendencias y ayudar a los estudiantes y organizaciones a investigar las tendencias por sí mismos. Ella explora las tendencias para una multitud de clientes, desde los sin ánimo de lucro hasta los clientes comerciales como Viacom, el banco ABN AMRO y las ONG como IVOS. Es autora de varios libros, entre ellos Cómo investigar tendencias de Biz Publishers. Como profesora invitada, comparte su experiencia en tendencias con estudiantes de todo el mundo. Ella es parte del Hub de Teach the Future Holanda y además está encargada del Boletín Global de Teach the Future y del área de comunicación de esta misma organización. Procedemos entonces con Els Dracht.
Hi, my name is Els Dracht. I'm an independent freelance trend researcher, trainer and writer living in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. And I'm also a volunteer at Teach the Future. I joined Teach the Future because I feel it's important for youngsters to realize that the future is open, the future can be changed, and it is theirs to change it. I realized this myself when I started teaching trends to bachelor students at an academy in the Netherlands. What I saw happening is when you teach the future, whether you do trend research, scenario planning, or any type of other futures thinking related activity, is that a lot of young people suddenly realize, wow, there's a whole world around me. I can explore it in various ways. And the future is very open, it's uncertain, and therefore this also gives me a lot of freedom and space to add to the future what I would like to add to the future. Of course, it's not always easy for everyone, so there are also students who struggle with this openness and uncertainty of the future because they rather would have a method or a way that will give only one answer, which is very binary, which is black or white, no gray areas. So it's also interesting to see how teaching the future also shows you immediately as a teacher what type of personalities your students have. Erika Bol was a colleague of mine at the academy that I worked at, so we were both teachers, and she approached me to help her communicate about Teach the Future. My background is also in communication science and studies, and what I've learned from this mainly is that when you don't communicate about something, it just doesn't exist for others. So when you're a nonprofit like Teach the Future, you do all kinds of good work, you do all kinds of activities, but when you don't share about them and when you don't communicate about them, nobody will know that you exist and you cannot create a movement. So I started out with helping Erika communicate via the social media of Teach the Future, mainly for the Dutch chapter hub of Teach the Future. But somewhere along the lines it evolved in doing it for the whole Teach the Future global organization. So I mainly post things on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, create a newsletter, think about ways of redesigning the website, drafting texts for the website, all that kind of stuff. So I'm not actively doing the teaching activities for Teach the Future, but much more communicate about what we do. To learn from each other, to share best practices, do's and don'ts, share failures, of course, too, and to help each other get the movement growing. Because, as I said, I feel the thinking about the future is a life skill. You can use it in everyday life. You don't have to be a professional futures thinker, but it's something you can, as an individual, you can incorporate into your own life. Having said that, a community of futures is a good thing, but it can also sometimes, something to watch out for, at least what I feel, is that you don't get too narrow-minded. When you only talk to people who are also futures thinkers, who are also very well known with the methodology, you might get a blind spot on how to communicate and talk to people about futures thinking who don't know anything about it. So I think as a futures community, this is also something we should watch out for and be aware of, and try to make it as accessible as we can for everyone around the globe. I think life in general is presenting a lot of challenges, and it has always did so. Of course, nowadays we are like uber connected, and things spread globally very fast. So that makes it maybe a bit more complex than it used to be, than daily life used to be. But I think having future skills like dealing with uncertainty, thinking about for the long term, not only on the short term, thinking about what your actions, what kind of consequences they can have for other people, this kind of systems thinking can really help you in coping with uncertain futures and coping in your daily life. I think there's also things going on already in education, whether primary, secondary, college, university, that might not be labeled as futures thinking, yet, but are actually activities that we would categorize as future thinking skills. And maybe we should start with showing that there's already a lot done in education, because often when you approach teachers and say like, you need to add this to your toolbox, they would often feel a bit defensive. They're like, but I already do a lot of interesting things in my classrooms. Why should I add this new futures toolbox to my curriculum? So we also, as a Teach the Future community and as futures thinkers, should think about what is already happening in the world around us that's maybe now labeled differently. Where's the overlap? And how can we help people to see this, to become more aware of this? I think this will, in the end, also help us to integrate futures thinking more and literacy more into the curriculum, into classrooms all over the world. What I personally really like about being part of the Teach the Future community is that it's very international. People are very motivated. They are very socially conscious. They are very much into, helping education move forward, with the ultimate goal of also helping our next generations move forward. And that's something that I feel like, how could you be against it? Everybody should join. Yeah, because it all starts with education. I've worked for a lot of and trained also a lot of professionals in companies, but then you already see that they are like kind of set in their ways already. They find it harder to change, and their personality is already a bit more unchangeable. Whereas I feel that with younger people, especially kids, you can really add something to their personal and daily life, which they will take with them, throughout their whole life. So I feel you can have much more influence and impact when you start out with the younger people instead with the professionals and adults. So as I told you, I'm always communicating, thinking about opportunities for communicating about futures thinking activities related to education, because we Teach the Future. So if you have anything interesting to share, if you see an article, read a book, which you feel like, oh, that's really interesting for the people at Teach the Future, the Teach the Future community, please share it with me, because we can then share it via our socials or in our newsletter.
Muy bien, pues hasta el momento hemos tenido ya una perspectiva norteamericana, sudamericana, europea, y nos vamos a trasladar hasta Sudáfrica. Hasta Sudáfrica con Janine Nel. Ella tiene título de Vision Marketing, tiene un diploma de posgrado en estudios de futuros de la Escuela de Negocios de la Universidad de Stellenbosch. Tiene una maestría en estudios de futuros y además aprobada con honores. Es, por supuesto, directora de Teach the Future Sudáfrica, de NPO, que es un movimiento global que promueve el pensamiento futuro para estudiantes y educadores. La aspiración, en este caso de Teach the Future, es que cada estudiante esté preparado para navegar en un mundo incierto y tenga la agencia para imaginar y crear su futuro preferido. En Sudáfrica se realizan talleres sobre el futuro con alumnos y estudiantes de 9 a 24 años de edad. Janine cuenta con una amplia experiencia como líder en comunicación creativa y comercialización. Tiene experiencia internacional y local de Sudáfrica. en comercialización y comunicaciones corporativas, estrategias de participación pública, gestión de la reputación, capacitación en medios de comunicación y comunicaciones de crisis. Se destaca en la ejecución de estrategias y planes de gran impacto en sintonía con los mercados pertinentes y alineados en toda la organización para ejercer influencia. Y también es parte del equipo central de Teach the Future Global. Procedemos entonces con Janine Nell.
Good morning, Mexico City. I'm Janine Nell. I'm speaking to you from Cape Town, South Africa. I'm a director of Teach the Future in South Africa. I've been involved in futures work for the last few years, and about a year and a half ago, a colleague and I, Zon Horrell, we started the South African chapter of the Teach the Future movement. We do primarily workshops for school learners, students, and young people around the country. And our next area of focus will be teachers and educators. And because we know how big the challenge is ahead of us, we, in the beginning of this year, trained an additional 8 facilitators to conduct workshops with us. They are all future study graduates. The University of Stellenbosch, where I also studied, is the only university in South Africa and also on the African continent that teaches futures studies. And because we knew that these people already had a history and a background in future skills, the application of the tools, etc., we invited them to become part of our organization in South Africa. So future skills and futures thinking in South Africa is a fairly new discipline. It's not something that's very well known. Scenario work, on the other hand, is quite well known in South Africa. We've had quite a few scenario workshops, especially in the political arena, where the old apartheid regime went through a whole series of scenarios before the country transitioned to the democracy that it is today. In terms of practicing foresight, in terms of applying that in a business context, that is still quite new. So it is quite difficult for us to introduce it because people don't know it. We have, of course, a number of socioeconomic challenges in South Africa, which makes it rather urgent that we do bring a new mindset, a new way of thinking to especially young people in our country if we want to create any sort of future where they can prosper or even just create sustainable lives. We are, I think, the second most unequal country in the world, very high Gini coefficient. Some stats in the presentation for you, so how we compare South Africa, Mexico, US, Canada. It is an enormous challenge and it's not sustainable, especially if you look at our youth context, where we have the highest number of young people between the ages of 20 and 24 in the world that are not in training, that are not in university, they are not working. So we have millions of young people in this country who are doing nothing. They have no real potential, no real future plans. They're at the time of their life when they should be contributing to society, contributing to the economy, and they don't have that opportunity. So it's rather important for us. In our slide deck, we've got a cute little graphic where a youngster with a little flower sitting, utopian future, dystopian future, utopian future. That's not what we want. The future is not a lucky draw as to just take what you get. We have the opportunity to influence and co-create the futures that we want, that we prefer. But it doesn't just happen. It's based on our actions, on our decisions, and the impacts of what we do. And that is why we do it. What do we teach? Well, we do workshops. I know in the US and several other countries, future skills and future studies is part of the curriculum. We are not that fortunate. It's something that we are working on in South Africa. It's something we desperately want to institute. But we have been, unfortunately, most of the time given a one-day space. Most times 5 or 6 hours that we have with these youngsters. It's our only point of contact. We are working on some sort of mobile app where we can do follow-ups with them. But at this stage, we have one contact. It's usually a one-day workshop. So we've taken the curriculum that Professor Bishop has developed, and we've literally condensed it into a one-day program. What we do find is that we custom-make our workshops to specific needs of either a community or the school that we're working with. And we tell them what is future thinking. The very important thing is that we say to them there are many alternative futures. There is not just one, and they have to understand that. And we use that in practice. We also look at things like, in terms of how the world works. But the other very important thing for us, and especially in a country like South Africa where we have 11 official languages, we have so many people from so many backgrounds in terms of cultural tribes, etc., that the more diverse your community and the more diverse your thinking and the people that you think with, the better the result you would have. So how do we structure our courses? We talk about change, we talk about the world around us, we talk about what drives change, what makes it happen, we talk about our biases and lenses, and then we look at the future and the multiple alternative features that are available, possibly use features, but how do we create alternatives and multiple alternatives for ourselves? But especially in a time like today, what we've been focusing on the last few months, we've been fortunate to do a few online trainings with student groups, and we've focused especially on change and disruption and how to use change. We've been asked by university to work with their students because they were very overwhelmed, very unsure, very uncertain, and quite frankly scared about the world at the moment and what their place in it is, and they couldn't identify with that anymore. So we've worked on disruption and how to identify it and what do we do about it, and very importantly, how do we spot opportunities within that uncertainty and within that seemingly really frightening time. And why do we do that? Well, it's all connected. We do a lot of work in our workshops around the STEEP categories, the social, technological, economical, environmental, political. We analyze newspaper clippings according to the STEEP categories, and we look at impacts and what if this happens and what if that happens? How does it impact? Because ultimately, when you're at a crossroads that has multiple opportunities, you have to be able to say, I'm going to try and go this way. It's not about flipping a coin. It's about making informed decisions based on the things you see on the horizon, based on you thinking through the possible futures, the possible consequences of all those actions. So I thought I'll talk a bit about the kind of workshops we do in South Africa. We do workshops for young people, which is, I believe, you refer to elementary school. We call it primary school, which is around about the 8 to 13-year-old age. Those workshops are quite interactive. In fact, all the workshops are, but these are especially interactive. We alternate between indoors, working in little groups, going outside, playing with soccer balls, playing with a ball, literally throwing from one another to say, what happens if... And you throw the ball and they add on, and they throw the ball to somewhere else and they add on. So it's very practical. It's thinking on your feet, and we try and make it as fun as possible. And I've included a beautiful slide where the one youngster drew for us afterwards with we did a little exercise on banning plastic bags and the impact on the environment, on jobs and people, etc., where he drew a beautiful fish with no plastic cups and said, I love future studies. And that, I think, is one of those things that just makes it all worthwhile. We also do high school, which you call secondary school. With youngsters, we will really unpack the past, the present, and the future. And we look at how things change, how they might change going forward. We talk about disruptions, what happens if this happens. We formed relationships with groups, other groups in South Africa. One of them, the Kutla Wanong group, who focuses on maths and science skills, teaching in South Africa. We work with a lot of their learners. They have about 7,000 learners in the country that need training. So we are hard at work trying to source some CSR funding to be able to facilitate this. But one of the things I wanted to maybe just mention is in terms of education, and we've already done so well, we have so many assets within our community. For me, Teach the Future and our role as futurists is not about teaching the future, it's about facilitating those good discussions, about saying what happens next, how do we help and facilitate people think, and especially young people who are so creative, so imaginative, they can think it, but they also need to build the roadmap on how to achieve that. We as a futures community need to start expanding our community little by little, pull our community in, pull our youngsters in, get them to think with us. What do they need from their education? How does it need to be evolved? How does it need to be changed in order for them to be ready for the world of work as and when it happens? And how do we want that world to look? So for us, we have all the tools and methodologies to help facilitate those discussions. And that is how I see our role in terms of education. Because if we move those discussions, then the change within education will happen organically. It will evolve from the inside out, rather than us putting pressure from the outside, saying, well, education is no good. Well, we have wonderful teachers. There are wonderful systems, but they need to change. And perhaps if the change comes from the inside, that could possibly be the most effective way of addressing the education that we need for 2030, for 2040, for 2050. And the most important reason that we create a future for the young people of our countries and the world where they can prosper and where they can provide for their children one day. Because ultimately, that is our aim. So I wish you well. I hope you have a wonderful conference, and I look forward to meeting some of you, many of you, in future. Thank you.
Agradecemos muchísimo la participación de Yaninel desde Sudáfrica. Muy bien, ahora nos vamos a pasar hasta Grecia. Es el turno de Epaminondas Christofilopoulos, que es jefe de la Cátedra UNESCO de Investigación sobre el Futuro, y además es jefe de la Unidad de Prospectiva de la Fundación para la Investigación y la Tecnología GELAS en Fort, Grecia. Tiene formación en física, estudios ambientales, relaciones internacionales y prospectiva, y experiencia en transferencia de tecnología y colaboración internacional en investigación, coordinando varios proyectos en Europa, Asia, la península del Golfo y América Central, mientras que ha trabajado extensamente en China durante más de 10 años. Es responsable del Hub de Teach the Future en Grecia y es también una estratega del futuro certificado. Además, es vicepresidente de la Foresight Europe Network, FEN, y copresidente del Nodo Griego del Proyecto Milenio. Y también es miembro de la Federación Mundial de Estudios del Futuro, World Future Studies Federation. Procedemos entonces con Epaminondas Christofilopoulos.
Hello, I'm Epaminondas Christofilopoulos. Maybe I have the longest name in Teach the Future around the world. I'm based in Greece, in Thessaloniki, and I'm head of the UNESCO Chair on Futures Research, which is hosted in the Foundation for Research and Technology Hellas. So we are based in a research institute in Greece. We started working with Teach the Future since the last 2-3 years, and it was just a lucky moment that we met with people working in Teach the Future, and we found that it is a very interesting community with very impressive activities. The first time it was we're just looking on the internet, and we found a huge Teach the Future library where everybody can find a big list of tools and publications to use for similar activities. So it was very easy decision to be part of this community and start planning our first activities also in the field. So for us, it is very important. I mean, we always work with networks, and this is a very important and a very active network. You can find support, you can exchange information and tools about how to teach the future in young or older kids, and this is what we do. We collaborate with partners, and our next plan is also to start bringing in contact some kids or schools that we do things here in Greece with other kids around the world. One happy moment is actually today. We had our, actually I have it, I just received it. This is the Teach the Future book that was published in Greek, and that will be made available in bookstores around the country. So that is a very big, a flagship moment for us here in Greece. And as we talk about education, and as everything we do is about education, I must say, with the experience we have here in Greece, there are very few things that have changed during, I don't know, the last 50, 60 years in education. Of course, things have improved, but basically the techniques, the methods, and the subjects that the students are dealing with every day are more or less the same. So it is a big challenge for us to help introduce new things in this area, things that will be very useful for the kids today for their future. And this is also a big challenge because education and all the education system in the country here is very reluctant to any change. So this is one of our challenges here in the country. On the other side, also, this is also a big opportunity for us. So although we are a research institute and although our main activities are focusing on research and on providing services, applied services, still we now have another very interesting field, and this is education and providing services and education activities to kids and to young people here in Greece. I think this is all. Hello, I'm Epaminondas Christophilos.
Muy bien, agradecemos mucho ahora la participación desde Grecia de Epaminondas Christofilopoulos. Y ahora vamos a continuar ya casi a la recta final de esta ronda internacional de Teach the Future. En penúltimo lugar, entonces, tenemos a Lourdes Rodríguez desde Madrid, España. Lourdes es licenciada en psicología. Está especializada en investigación y análisis de tendencias desde 2010. Ayuda a empresas líderes en España y en Latinoamérica. Desde 2018 se ejecuta como profesional independiente. Colabora con distintos proyectos como responsable del área de tendencias en Mindset, miembro del capítulo español de Speculative Futures, profesora invitada en McMarsell School, Mistake Creativity School, Talent Garden Innovation School, entre muchas otras, además de estar certificada en diseño de futuros y prospectiva estratégica por el Instituto H21. Y además de tener una maestría en megatendencias y escenarios a la estrategia por el Instituto de Estudios de Futuros de Copenhague. Además, es coorganizadora y responsable de la selección de speakers en la Conferencia Internacional sobre Diseño de Futuros Primer EU. Es, por supuesto, la líder del Hub español de Teach the Future y también tiene el papel de coordinadora de redes o de hubs en la misma organización. Adelante entonces con Lourdes Rodríguez.
Hi everybody, I'm really happy to be sharing with you today. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Lourdes Rodríguez. I'm from Seville, the south of Spain, but I'm currently living in Madrid. My background is in psychology. I am a trained researcher and analyst for more than 10 years. I also teach about how to understand our context and how to discover signals of change and analyze them. Now I am also studying more about regenerative system and system change, because I really think that it's important not only to understand our context, not only to think about the future, but really how we can implement change, in a complex system. I'm really learning a lot in this field, and I really think that we can implement some approaches and frameworks and methodology in the future field. My role in Teach the Future, well, I have a double role. I lead the hub in Spain with Mónica Quintana as part of Mindset, which is the official Teach the Future partner here in Spain. And my other role is as a network coordinator of the global community of Teach the Future. Why did I decide to be part of Teach the Future? Well, I can't think about the future without thinking about young people and kids. They are the future. We all need to be better prepared for a complex world, an uncertain world. We all need the skills to better understand constant changes and disruption from a systemic and regenerative way of looking at the world. For me, being part of the Teach the Future community is an honor, above all because I am learning a lot within the community. The fact that we all work together, that we all have different backgrounds, we are a diverse community from different countries, is an amazing opportunity. And what have I done through Teach the Future for really teaching the future? Well, after co-organizing the Futures Conference Primary Europe in Madrid last October, where we invited Peter Bishop to speak about Teach the Future project, our team in Spain is working to create awareness about future thinking in several schools and educational communities here in Madrid, as Montessori La Florida and also Foife School. They are making huge steps to really implement in the curriculum some aspect of future thinking, and we are really happy about that. And in a more specific example, last January, before the pandemic, I gave a talk to more than 300 teens from 13 to 18 years old, and also their parents, about the importance of thinking about the future, the diversity of possible futures that they have ahead of them, and the power of imagination to actually co-create and design more equitable and inclusive futures. Well, what are the challenges for the future of education? From my point of view, it's resistance to change. It's a sector that it's really slow in adapting to change and implementing change. Despite the great innovations in education, it's really difficult to apply this innovation to the classroom. Only a few schools, a few organizations are really implementing big innovations in the educational system. I'm not only talking about technological innovation. For me, it's more designing more significant learning experience, that the educational sector itself has to be capable of adapting or even anticipating change and helping youngsters to better navigate their futures. And talking about the world and life in general, the most important challenges that we are facing, we have a lot. We are in the middle of a global pandemic, but for me, I'm really worried about all related with conspiracy theories, the lack of critical thinking, the increasing polarization of our local and global communities. I feel that we are really lacking our capacity to understand other people and to really respect other opinion and to really listen truly without ego. I'm really worried about this because if we can't communicate with each other, if we can't respect each other's opinion, we can't advance. As community, we can't advance. As society, it's going to be really difficult. I feel a lack of empathy, and as I said, the difficulties to really listen to each other in a respectful and meaningful way. I think we need more significant human relationship, like truly human relationships. We need to create these bonds with each other, even in the digital medium, like we are doing now. We need how we can create this community, or how we can connect better with each other. First, I think we need to agree on the platform or the platforms, the medium where we are going to communicate with each other, where we are going to share knowledge, where we are going to share challenges and learnings. It could be world cafes, it could be informal conversations, peer-to-peer meetings, peer-to-peer learnings. There are tons of ways of doing it. I think it's really important to share learnings and challenges, not start from zero in each country, build from the shared learning and the collective intelligence of the community that we all already have. To finish, I really like to introduce this concept of regenerative networks. We need to look into the nature, into living ecosystem, and learn from them, because it could be really powerful if we can be inspired by nature and regenerative networks and create these connections that are not extractive but regenerative. I think it's the way to advance in this decaying world. And this is all. Thank you very much, and see you soon. Hi.
Muchísimas gracias a Lourdes Rodríguez desde España. Muy bien, y nos toca el turno ahora, antes de pasar con el capítulo México, a el último participante de nuestra ronda internacional. Estamos hablando de Brenda Herchmer. Ella, más que a Teach the Future, pertenece a su propia organización que se ha aliado más bien con Teach the Future. Ella pertenece a Campus for Communities of the Future Canada, Campus para Comunidades del Futuro. Es una apasionada constructora de comunidades que cree que las comunidades mejoran cuando sus líderes lo hacen. Es la fundadora y CEO de una empresa social llamada, como ya acabamos de decir, Campus para las Comunidades del Futuro. Ella es oradora, formadora y consultora en todo Canadá. Es socia de Teach the Future, ex profesora y directora del Niagara College. Trabajó para la ciudad de las Cataratas del Niágara y además es autora de 3 libros. También recibió una distinción de mujer de parte de la Young Women Christian Association, Asociación Cristiana de Mujeres Jóvenes, y además es una graduada distinguida de la Universidad de Brock. Ella y su familia viven en Welland, donde también poseen un café y una tienda de cometas o papalotes en línea. Damos el paso entonces ahora a Brenda Herchmer.
Hello, hola. Hi, my name is Brenda Herchmer, and I am the founder and principal collaborator of a social enterprise called Campus for Communities of the Future. I am from Niagara, Ontario, Canada, and I'm delighted to be connecting with you today.
So I just wanted to share a couple of things. The first one is that I'm not really sure I ever considered myself to be a futurist. I was a passionate community builder because I believed that strong leaders equal strong communities. But it turns out that there is a connection, because you can't have a strong community without being focused on the future. So what we do at the Campus for Communities is help strengthen the capacity for dealing with the future by multiplying, mobilizing, and maximizing community-led development, citizen-led development primarily. And we do that by offering training and certification, primarily online, coaching, tools, and opportunities for sharing and learning from one another. And I got involved with the Teach the Future network as a result of having been invited, I think about 4 years ago, to a futurist think tank in Washington, D.C. And it was there that I met Peter Bishop. And I think he felt much like I did. I really felt that I wasn't necessarily paying a lot of attention to the future, and kind of knew that I should be. And I think among futurists in general, there seems to be a growing understanding that to move into the future with hope and energy and motivation, you really have to have a strong community. And so it turns out that we brought respective skills. And so I think the best way to describe my relationship with the Teach the Future network is as a partner. So this is to better understand and really convey what it is we do at the Campus for Communities of the Future and how this fits in with Teach the Futures. And this has only recently become so clear, and it seems rather simple now. It's just taken a long time to be able to present this in a clear way. And really what is understood now is that to be a future-focused community leader, there's 3 different components or principles that need to be in place. The most important is the shared leadership part. And really that's what we're talking about in terms of engaging the community and really respecting citizens who live there as the experts. So that shared leadership, a community development approach, is absolutely essential. In addition to that, it is about systems thinking. So it's really about seeing not only our local community as a system, but the broader country, the broader global community as a system. And then, of course, the third piece, which is really about ensuring strategic foresight and really paying attention to change signals. So that's those 3 components that contribute to being a future-focused community leader. And to unpack that in a little more detail, when we're talking about shared leadership, we're really talking about shared power and control. And ultimately, it is that leads to the trusted relationships that we need for transformative change. And it also ensures integrating our communities, because that integrative process is required to really respond to the complexity of the issues and the opportunities that we're facing these days. It also is what makes us much more agile, and what leads to innovation is if we bring a lot of diversity and a lot of different experiences and lenses together, and that's really how we get to innovation. Innovation is social. And I think that shared leadership piece also really does reinforce stakeholder ownership and responsibility for the solutions. We own it because we have been involved with the process that got us there. So shared leadership, I think, reflects a different kind of leadership, which is really about making sure we design a process to ensure that every voice is heard from. So the shared leadership, in addition to systems thinking, it's that big picture. It's really looking at the big picture to not just keep responding to symptoms, but to really uncover the complexity and the root causes. It's really about focusing on why we're doing something as opposed to the what and the how. And the strategic foresight, and that sounds like something that all of you are interested in, We're seeing that as being critically important but often neglected, and that's really about coming together as a community to develop strategies for responding to the complexity and the uncertainty of the times that we live in. And we really do need to pay attention to signals of change and trends and disruptions and consequences and implications. And if we do that, we're going to have far more confidence and competency for being future ready. So all of that takes a different kind of leadership. It's not the kind of leadership we are typically used to. It means we need to unlearn a lot about leadership, but we really have spent a lot of time over a lot of years really getting to the kind of competencies that are required to get to that point where we can bring our communities together to be future-focused leaders. So it's about a lot of different competencies, being able to respect the value of differences, applying a community-led approach to planning, really considering this broader influence, continuing to learn this inclusive process, balancing, probably most importantly, ensuring there's a balance between quality of life and economic development so that we're not making all decisions on the basis of money. So we also, to get ready for this journey into the future, we've developed a lot of tools and a framework. And part of the framework, as you'll see on the upper right-hand side here, it's really a process for thinking big but starting small. And one of the things we learned is that the trusted relationships are absolutely essential. And so a lot of that can happen when you start with a quick success project. And it doesn't necessarily matter what that project is, it's just something that the community has determined is a priority. It can be about building a park or renovating a school or starting a youth council. It's just the community has to agree that it's important, and they all come together and make that happen and build the trusted relationships as they get to know one another. So, it starts with that core, a cohort of community leaders. They pick a small project, and then what we find is there's this magical synergy that happens and gets them ready to really look at the bigger picture and the longer term planning that's necessary, not only for quality of life, but for economic development as well. And I think many leaders like yourselves may be doing that intuitively. What we observed and put together was a planning approach that is grounded in community development, that described what we were seeing being put into place by successful leaders. And you can find this on our website, as well as a lot of different tools and resources to help make that happen. So that's it. That's it in a very summarized way. If you're looking for more information, you can find us at campusforcommunities.com. It's a pleasure being with you. It's been an honor to spend a bit of time with you today. Have a fabulous day, and hopefully our paths will cross soon. Bye for now.
Agradecemos muchísimo la participación de Brenda Herchmer desde Granada. Antes de proceder a mi participación como parte del Hub de México, quiero exhortarlos a que puedan ir haciendo sus preguntas a través del chat, ya sea en YouTube o ya sea aquí en Zoom, aprovechando que sí tenemos algunos de nuestros ponentes conectados, como Rosalía, Janine, Peter Bishop, Wellington Porto y Lourdes Rodríguez. Entonces, los estoy invitando para que puedan ir escribiendo sus dudas. To all the speakers, I am inviting the audience to write their questions on the chat in order you to answer them while I am giving my presentation. Ok, vamos entonces a proceder a ver la parte de México. Muy bien. Por supuesto, me voy a ir bastante rápido, dado el tiempo, y nuevamente los invito a que mientras compartan mi participación, ustedes puedan ir escribiendo sus dudas en los chats. Muy bien. Procedemos entonces. Recordando nuestro tema principal sobre comunidades de futuro, capacidades anticipatorias para la escuela y la vida, bajo el gran marco del gran tópico de los desafíos del futuro, les voy a presentar rápidamente solo unos pequeños conceptos de el contexto que tenemos respecto a la educación. Vamos a hablar un poquito de la educación postformal. Si estamos hablando de tiempos postnormales, se empieza a hablar de transnormalidad.
Ale, perdón que te interrumpa, Ale, pero se escucha muy cortado tu audio.
¿Sí? ¿Oye cortado?
Sí,
Okay.
como sucio, como con interferencia.
Ah, ok, no sé si me escuchan mejor. A ver, probando, 3, 2, 1. ¿Me escuchan mejor o se sigue cortando?
Se sigue cortando.
Muy bien. Déjenme probar lo siguiente. Ok, hola, hola. Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Me siguen escuchando cortado? Hola, hola, hola.
Mejora un poco, a ver.
Probando, 3, 2, 3, 2. Hola, hola, hola. Prueba de audio. 3, 2, 1.
Mejoró.
3, 2, 1. ¿Se escucha mejor? Probando. 3, 2, 1. En prueba de audio.
No, se sigue escuchando raro.
¿No? ¿Se sigue cortando?
Y se sigue cortando todavía.
Ok, vamos a hacer una última prueba, si no. Ya. Doctor Baena, de todos modos nos quedan 9 minutos para la una. No sé si gusta que procedamos de todos modos a las preguntas.
Ya no escuchamos ahora sí. ¿Qué pasó? ¿Podrías estar?
Sí, hola, sí.
¿Sí? ¿Podrías cambiarte de aparato? ¿O quieres que yo lo lea?
Ok, puedo cambiarme rápidamente de dispositivo. Entonces, si gustan aprovechar para mientras algunas preguntas, ya estamos muy cerca de la hora de cierre.
Bueno, podemos ir comentando algunas de las cuestiones que se han manejado, que son ideas que vale la pena que se vayan revisando, que se vayan analizando. Peter insiste mucho en que son más importantes las habilidades más que el cúmulo de conocimientos y datos. Desde luego, se trata de saber qué vamos a hacer con el conocimiento, no tenerlo ahí. Y entonces, el modelo que sugiere es investigar, fomentar la curiosidad y el pensamiento creativo, cosa que se tendrá que ir haciendo y insistiendo en muchas situaciones, y que el futuro, como nos dice la compañera de Italia, debería ser un tema que esté en todos los planes de estudio. De Brasil, Rosita Alegría nos invita a preguntar qué clase de imágenes estamos enseñando, qué tipo de jóvenes estamos preparando para carreras que ya no van a existir. Nuestra capacidad será la de aprender, desaprender y volver a aprender para que no tengamos que regresar solamente al pasado. Definitivamente lo que se viene no se puede explicar con el pasado, y la creación de comunidades para el futuro es fundamental. Igual nos han insistido en que la cuestión de tenemos que avanzar, inclusive respondiendo preguntas que todavía no se hacen, y hacer comunidades de futuro que tengan diversos futuros que sirvan. Comunicar pensamiento del futuro, evitar las respuestas binarias que ya no se dan prácticamente en nuestra era actual, en nuestro momento actual. Y un planteamiento definitivo es que los grandes desafíos requieren nuevas formas de pensar y es a través del futuro que pueden darse. Porque también, y es algo que tenemos que tener claro, el futuro no es un sorteo, ¿sí? Hay muchos futuros alternativos. También no olvidar que el poder de la imaginación es crear el futuro, diseñar nuevas experiencias de aprendizaje, construir a partir de aprendizajes compartidos. Y bueno, las redes generativas inspiradas en la naturaleza. Y no olvidar que los líderes son fundamentales, el liderazgo compartido, que es el que hace una tarea compartida con pensamiento sistémico, es lo que nos puede ir conduciendo hacia el futuro. Pregunto si Ale ya ha cambiado de dispositivo o pasamos a algunas cuestiones más.
Sí,
Aletia,
¿qué tal?
Aletia, ahora sí.
¿Sí me escuchan?
Mucho mejor. Adelante, por favor.
Sí,
Continuamos con tu presentación. A
sí,
ver.
de hecho había algunos comentarios por el chat. Alcancé a ver algunos comentarios para los otros ponentes. Muy bien. De acuerdo, voy a irme entonces rápido. Muy bien. Comentaba yo que en un contexto demasiado rápido y con unos conceptos muy, muy breves, estábamos hablando de educación postformal. Educación postformal corresponde propiamente a lo que vino después de las operaciones formales de Piaget. Y si estamos hablando de tiempos postnormales, también ya se habla de transnormalidad, es lógico que también haya algún tipo de post en la educación. Nos dice Jennifer Gitley con estos otros autores que hay que despertar a los maestros y luego los maestros deben despertar a los niños y a los jóvenes. Lo que importa es una cuestión de despertar porque la evolución ha hecho que los seres humanos caigan en un sueño que está lleno de sueños intelectualistas. El despertar debe buscarse dentro del propio ser humano. Y ya nos comentaban un poco algunos de nuestros participantes de Teach the Future sobre eso. Además, hay una cuestión importante. Estamos tratando de llegar o de alcanzar a los objetivos del desarrollo sostenible y cómo podemos participar en ello. O cómo entra también este marco de la educación a través de Teach the Future para esto. Tenemos el objetivo número 4 sobre educación de calidad, donde estaríamos hablando un poco de insertar este tipo de habilidades o capacidades hacia el futuro, cosa que, como ya nos dijo Peter Bishop, no se está haciendo en general dentro de las escuelas. También tenemos el objetivo número 8 sobre trabajo decente y crecimiento económico. Esto se refiere a que entonces tras unas habilidades que no nada más son blandas, sino ahora también anticipatorias, estaríamos hablando de preparar gente más competente para el trabajo. Tenemos también el objetivo del desarrollo número 11 sobre ciudades y comunidades sostenibles. Entonces, precisamente, cómo formamos y forjamos seres humanos en torno a esto. También hay un objetivo transversal que se está pensando por parte de Sonia Consiglio Favaretto, que es una de las pioneras de los Objetivos del Desarrollo Sostenible, y es el de la salud mental. A partir de esta pandemia que estamos viviendo, se considera que esto debiera ser un objetivo del desarrollo transversal a todos los demás. No ha sido un asunto oficial, pero sí es importante ponerlo sobre la mesa. Ahora bien, sobre las capacidades, voy a dar 4 ejes rectores a partir de una propuesta que tengo sobre un esquema de proactividad. Tomando las dimensiones humanas, desde lo intelectual, necesitaríamos una parte de autoconvencimiento, desde lo emocional, autogestión emocional o autodominio, desde lo físico, autorregulación, desde lo espiritual, la autoconciencia. Por mencionar algunas de las capacidades para la vida y la escuela, está la sensorialidad, la empatía, la intuición, la imaginación, el pensamiento estratégico, sentido de responsabilidad interespecie, creatividad, conciencia anticipatoria, muy importante, inteligencia emocional, ética, flexibilidad, y además también tenemos curiosidad y principalmente resiliencia. Sobre construir comunidades de futuros, pues se trata de crear comunidades que lleven a cabo el cambio transformacional y tengan la capacidad de resolver problemáticas complejas, basándose en relaciones de confianza, liderazgos efectivos y eficaces con un enfoque de futuros, en torno al bienestar integral. Además, ¿qué pasa cuando formamos estas comunidades desde edades tempranas? Bueno, es importante formar seres prospectivos, porque esta construcción de comunidades convergerá en forjar este tipo de agrupaciones que trabajen en pro del planeta. Esto llevaría por objetivo formar agentes de transformación, que a su vez estén comprometidos con su crecimiento y desarrollo personales para generar impacto colectivo, servicio y, como ya mencionamos, resiliencia en diferentes sectores. Comparto aquí los testimonios de 3 miembros de mi equipo del Hub de Teach México, donde expresan lo que para ellos significa pertenecer a Teach the Future México. Y lo que podemos observar entre estos 3 opiniones es que los 3 hablan de una oportunidad y hablan de visionar en torno al futuro y de hacer cada día mejores seres humanos y un mejor mundo. Quiero hacer la extensión donde aquí quiero mencionar rápidamente un comentario que es un poco contradictorio a lo que muchos colegas dicen, pero me animo a dar mi punto de vista personal. Desde mi enfoque, los niños y los adolescentes no son el futuro. Todos somos el futuro. Es como si estuviéramos de pronto esperando a que ellos fueran adultos para forjar el mundo. Y desde el día de hoy, todos y cada uno, niños, adolescentes, adultos mayores, debemos labrar el mundo que todos queremos. De ahí que la ética y la conciencia, la responsabilidad intergeneracional sea tan importante. Entonces requerimos escuchar la voz y forjar e impulsar las acciones de los niños, de los adolescentes, desde la etapa que se encuentran ahora para construir el futuro desde ya. De aquí que se haga una invitación a estos talleres impartidos por Teach the Future México sobre futuros personales específicamente, gracias y a través del Centro de Diseño, Cine y Televisión aquí en la Ciudad de México, que al ser en línea se pueden tomar desde cualquier parte del mundo. Muy bien, esa fue una presentación express y procedemos, si es que todavía hay oportunidad, a algunas preguntas o participación. Muchas gracias.
Bueno, muy bien. Básicamente, pues ha habido muchos saludos a Peter Bishop, que pues, claro, con todo nuestro cariño y nuestra emoción, es bueno que también reciba nuestros saludos y congratulaciones por este proyecto. Ni preguntas y respuestas hasta ahora parece que no hay, solo un comentario que a Lucio le pareció excelente el recorrido de Teach the Future Global. No sé si alguien más quiere hacer algún comentario, algo que haya quedado en duda o que quieran profundizar. Tenemos, pues prácticamente ya estamos en tiempo.
Un pequeño comentario.
Lucio, ¿quieres hacer algún comentario?
Sí, se puede, sí.
Por favor.
De preferencia en inglés, por favor, de preferencia en inglés para que puedan aprovechar nuestros ponentes que están conectados.
Thank you, thank you.
Ese es el desafío del curso, de la videoconferencia.
Yes.
Adelante.
Congratulations, Aletia, Guillermina. Wonderful your travel by the world of the futures, the futurists and prospectives and foresighter and thinkers around of future studies. Wonderful in this time. Now the new focus and very, very important apports since the different zones in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Y gracias a ti por este esfuerzo. Gracias. Alain, ¿quieres hacer algún comentario, por favor?
Yes, it's going to be a very quick one. Only to for Mr. Bishop, I want to ask about for him, which is the most difficult part when he is trying to teach the futures to younger people, and also I want to recognize that it's very interesting his talks that he shared with us. Very important since I met him in Mexico last year, and also congratulations to you to the seminar because the subjects are very important, very interesting, and I feel very honored to be here with you every time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elaine. It is good seeing you again. It was a great time, and we saw Lucio and Alethea and yourself in Mexico City last year. You asked a brief question, so let me give you a brief answer. The hardest thing about teaching students about the future is getting to the students, because school districts, schools, and teachers have a full curriculum already. And they are not too interested in us going into schools and teaching about the future. Now, let me point out that Janine's workshops in South Africa are outside of schools. And when we talk to students outside of schools, particularly, they love this stuff. It's engaging, it's interesting, it's challenging, much more so than their regular academic subjects, because they're learning to think, they're learning to challenge themselves and each other, things like that. So I don't think it's really hard. It is a little disconcerting to them because one of the trademarks of future studies is that we don't have the answers. In school, the teacher always has the answers. Whether it's right or not, there is one answer, and that's what you put down on the test, and that's what gets you a good grade. So we're challenging students to think of multiple answers, of not always settling just on one, which we define as critical thinking. There are multiple ways of seeing a situation, multiple ways of thinking about it, multiple solutions to problems. So I don't think that's hard. Once we get that across, they go, oh, that's interesting. And that's even more challenging than coming up with the right answer. But like I said, we're not yet to doing a lot of teaching with students in schools. Let me ask my colleagues, Lourdes and Janine have both had attempts to teach the future with students. Do you have a response to Elaine's question?
Janine, go, that you have a wider experience.
So first of all, thank you very much for the comments before. So first of all, I'd like to echo what Peter said. It's difficult to get to the students. When we do get to them, sometimes it's at a school, but it's after hours. And it's something extra. The biggest worry that schools and teachers have is that it's going to be yet more work for them, which is why they try and resist it. The other challenging thing that I find in workshops is that you almost have to give the young people permission to think creatively. Because in a school, they're boxed in a scenario and they have to sit still and be quiet and listen. And then we come in and we try and create as chaotic an environment as possible. We put them in groups and we encourage them to talk. And we say, you can go wild. And you have to say to them, come on, you can think of something a bit more adventurous. So you have to almost encourage them to think a bit wider. I don't know if this might be relevant in Mexico, but the other thing in South Africa is, especially if you work with youngsters from poorer communities, is that their worlds are very small and they think very limiting. Their thoughts are very limited. They have very little life experience outside of their communities. So sometimes that's a challenge, that they don't know that much of the world, so they can't bring a lot of outside thinking into the activity. But that for me, it's a challenge to overcome, so you need to be aware of it. And you have to try and make the examples relevant to something that they might understand or know more of.
Thank you. Lourdes, do you want to say something?
Yes, I totally agree with Peter and Janine. It's really difficult. Only just the start of that they have to be aware of what is future thinking. You have to start by explaining to them what is future thinking and why it's important. So the first step is just telling them what is and why it's important. And then I think when they see it or when they experience it, you have them, because they immediately see the value. So if you have the opportunity to do like a small workshop one day, at least 2 or 3 hours to really experience, they totally get it. So it's the first contact is really important.
Yeah, I think the summary is that initially they say, well, you want me to think for myself, which is not allowed or encouraged in school. And we say yes. And they say, first of all, well, I've never done that before. And so like Janine said, we'll try and you'll like it. And they do. It's not very hard to get through that. Thank you, Elaine, for the question.
Thank you. Hay un comentario en español de Costa Rica. Carlos Obando dice, tenemos una necesaria preocupación por la construcción de futuros desde la gente joven, pero efectivamente también es necesario que los adultos construyamos futuros. Es decir, es una necesidad y un reto de todos, pero quizá creando y pensando una especie de transición permanente del futuro y del presente de las diferentes generaciones, un proceso permanente de construcción de futuros intergeneracionales, compartiendo un poco la idea de Aletia. Muchas gracias. ¿Alguien más? Ok, bueno. Pues el tiempo ya nos ganó, ya prácticamente estamos cerrando. No sé si quieres decir una última palabra y yo despediría el evento, Aletia.
Sí, claro. I want to thank Peter, Janine, Lourdes, Rosa, Wellington for your presence here, for your also to you and to the other participants, because of your big effort, because of your time. And it's really great to be a team and a community. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate this for the Latin American community also.
Well, let on the behalf of our team, let me thank you and Guillermina for giving us the opportunity. I mean, believe it or not, I've not heard a lot of the wonderful ideas that this team has shared in these videos. So I learned a lot too, and I hope your audience does. We enjoyed it, and it's been a great opportunity. Thank you, Alethea and Guillermina, for featuring us on this broadcast.
Thank you. Y un aviso, perdón, un aviso rápido muy importante. Los subtítulos fueron patrocinados por Teach the Future. Entonces también muchas gracias. Thank you for the sponsorship of the subtitles. Y si no hubiera sido por eso, no hubiéramos podido contar con este recurso. Muchas gracias.
Muchísimas gracias a todos. Thanks for all. and have a nice day. Con todos los demás, nos veremos el próximo 28 de agosto. Recuerden que en julio no tenemos videoconferencia, sería hasta el 28 de agosto, donde prácticamente el desafío mayor de la salud, que es en el que estamos viviendo, va a ser tratado por un médico que lo ha vivido de cerca, del servicio de endocrinología de un centro médico público y y un compañero de una organización que se llama México Saludable. Creo que esto también va a ser sumamente interesante por el desafío que sigue retándonos una y otra vez. Entonces, bueno, pues gracias por todo y recuerden, el futuro no es un sorteo, no podemos apostarle a un solo escenario. Muchísimas gracias. Gracias, Ceci. Gracias, ese equipazo de staff que siempre nos está apoyando. Muy amable. Muchísimas gracias a todos. Hasta luego. Gracias. Bye.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Bye.